Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast, and we're taking advantage of the last day of the All-Star break here to bring you guys a futures video. A couple of looks from Nate and I each on some futures, mostly about the teams, I noticed, not much on the players here, but still some really good value with these looks that we're bringing you. We also got to that Hornets and Lakers game, so hopefully you guys are able to check that out for the one-game slate that we have on Wednesday, and then back in full here on Thursday. We also did have a couple futures. I'll just mention I took the Magic plus 145 to win the Southeast. We put that out in our a video from last week alongside some of the All-Star looks. Nate, what was your halfway bet there as well? You had a future in there?
I did have a player, Steph Castle, Rookie of the Year, which is it's going down at this point. I don't know if there's really another exploitable like awards market bet to make at this point. Like, Peyton Pritchard minus 150, still the sixth man of the year. But that depends on how many of these guys start. Otherwise, But in any case, let's get into these team picks. I got the Mavs to make the playoffs plus 125 at FanDuel. Currently the 8 seed, despite the massive injury issues, and you've got the fan base issues, which I don't think that's going to hurt the players that much. We saw them immediately rally to beat Boston without AD even. And then, of course, their one sample of one with AD, they looked pretty damn good beating Houston. Based on the injury timelines, they could have all three of these bigs back by late March. AD, Lively, and Gafford could be a go to get even a little bit of chemistry in before they potentially are in a play-in situation. And this is a team that has stepped up in playoff atmosphere games, if you want to call it that. Won their last 6 against the Lakers, Clippers, Thunder, and Warriors. And the Warriors are out here at minus 130 compared to the other side of the Mavs, despite being behind them. A little bit of playoff Jimmy juice, I guess. I would take the plus 118 on the Warriors personally, just as the odd team out. I don't know if Jimmy can completely fix what's wrong here. But versus the Mavs, just once they get all their guys in there, they're just going to be such a great defensive team. And then when you have Kyrie Irving, we talk about him not being the alpha, but if AD's in there with him, he doesn't necessarily, it's a 1A, 1B alternating thing kind of based on the matchup. And let's see the Warriors deal with AD if he's healthy in a play-in situation, right? Mavs, Jason Kidd has more answers. They had most of these guys were seasoned in the finals run last year. So I think they can at least get in this thing one way or another.
Yeah, of the teams that are likely to make it from the play-in, I would still leave them there. I think the Clippers have room to grow. I think the Timberwolves have room to grow. And those are the two teams that are currently in front of them, right in front of them. And then, when you talk about them being 8th, that should be good enough to handle the Kings and the Dubs. And if the Suns sneak in and knock one of those guys out, then I would still take this Mavs team. That's the sort of remaining storyline now after Luka's traded, at least for us who aren't Mavs fans and are obviously not still grieving. Best of luck to you guys. But with AD out there, this is a team, man. Without AD, this is a good team. It's a good team with Kyrie Irving if he turns back time a little bit and can do what he does when Luka's been out consistently, which has not been the case. It has been somewhat inconsistent for him with Luka out, but at the same time, they have so many guys around him now. I agree that they should be able to keep doing their thing, especially on defense. So this makes sense. I like them a lot more than, to your point, talking about the Warriors, I think is important. And we're not even really talking about the Kings because I don't know what we're going to get from them, but I just know that I'm going to get half of the duo that led Chicago last year. And I don't want any part of that with LaVine and DeRozan on the same squad. But speaking of not wanting any part of this, let me get an under on Philly 76ers, 34.5 wins on DraftKings, minus 110 for the under. Price same both ways. Over is also that. To put it, basically, they're just talking about a 500 record. That's what they put them at, right? Because they are 20-34 right now, and they would need to go 15-13 to end the season to get to the 34.5 wins. What have you seen a 28 sample size from this team going 500? No. Do you no, right? We don't expect any of this. So it's interesting because I got them at under 54.5 points to open the season, which is laughable right now, is it not? And you could keep betting this down the whole way. So a couple of things happened. A sort of news dump on Super Bowl Sunday as the Eagles were busy winning the chip. Their basketball team was announcing that their big man and all-star player should have surgery. He shouldn't be playing right now. If he wants to be considered 100%, he won't be 100% again until he gets surgery. Massive news, but way to hide it underneath the Super Bowl. And then he shouldn't have been playing during the Olympics because that's contributing to him needing. That's all part of this one story. I think we saw the tank start right before the All-Star break. Tyrese Maxey missed the last game there. We knew Embiid was going to miss it because it was a back-to-back when all those teams were playing on Wednesday. They lost to Brooklyn 100-96 in that game, and that's their second time losing to that team. It's just all bad. If you look at the way that they played with Embiid, that's where you'd be looking for hope. Okay, we played 17 games with Embiid. What are they? 13-4. They probably got a really good record. Nope, they are 8-9 with Joel Embiid this season straight up. They're 12-25 without him. Might be a little bit skewed by the fact that a lot of that 12-25 is also without some combo of Maxey and George. But like Paul George is a shell of himself. If you've seen him play in the last couple of games without Embiid, he had an opportunity to show fans that he was a 1A alpha of sorts that could play along with or without Maxey, but without Embiid especially. 9 points, had like 8 field goal attempts. Not much to expect right now from the former playoff P. This is now the sort of old aging playoff Paul George, not playoff Paul, just Paul George in general. With Embiid, they're actually at a 112 offensive rating, which would be good for 16th in the league. Without him, a 113 offensive rating, which would be good for 14th in the league. So like nothing doing there. The defensive rating is actually way worse. That's the big thing here is the offensive rating without him is up at, or excuse me, defensive rating without him is 118.5. With him, it's 114.5. But the defensive rating with him is still 21st in the league on the season. So the rebounding has also been terrible. They're dead last, both with and without Embiid. They are a horrible rebounding team for a reason. There's no height outside of him, so it's really tough for these guys. Poor Yabu is dealing with guys 6 inches taller than him consistently. Like, there's just not much there, man. So I'll keep racking up Kelly Oubre stats on my fantasy team because they ain't got much else. But other than that, I ain't betting on Philly this season.
Yeah, I mean it's like the 10th seed here in the East is going to be like a hot potato passed around of like I don't really want it. I don't really want to be in this. I don't want to have to play more games if I'm Joel Embiid, but somebody's going to get it. The Sixers can definitely get it with under 34.5 wins, and I mean that still to me makes me question whether the Miami Heat are going to be able to beat them, you know, if Embiid's out there in a 1-game scenario, or even if it's just Maxey and George, and like maybe Paul George can have a good game for once in a blue moon here. But Heat to miss the playoffs is plus 235 at DraftKings, which is an insanely juicy offering here. I mean, they're currently 9th. They're currently 3 games under 500. This is introducing a Miami Heat team that has thrice scored 9 points or fewer in the fourth quarter and blown massive leads like what we recently saw. Granted, that was against the Thunder, but like, are we thinking they're going to be better in the clutch at some point without Jimmy Butler? I mean, the chemistry is a little bit better, but like, there's still just like Tyler Hero and a bunch of dudes, and in terms of creating shots, Bam has not had the offensive season that we'd hope for him. And the Miami Heat's offense is actually 30th in their last 6 here going into the break, despite adding a lot of good defensive pieces. Like, I just don't really see that offense being able to produce down the stretch versus like they still have 3 matchups against the Atlanta Hawks. And I think you also mentioned this in our other futures looks is the Hawks to win the division. Or you mentioned the Magic to win the division,
Magic,
but talk about the Hawks maybe finishing ahead of the Heat. Like, I'll take the Hawks to beat them out as the 8th seed here, which they currently are. I mean, Hawks already beat them in December. They have 3 more opportunities. The Hawks were 10th in offense and net rating going in the last 6 going into the break. They're adjusting without Jalen Johnson. They have these nice pieces now off the bench, and other young guys really proving themselves and playing hard. And the Heat are, it's just like, I mean, it's just old magic. Like, it's, remember when they were in the play-in, they almost lost the first play-in to the Bulls 2 years ago. And then Jimmy just like heroics, and then Jimmy heroics all the way to the finals. He's just like, he ain't walking through that door. Like, I don't know who is saving them down the stretch of a one and done situation. So I'll take them to not be able to navigate the play-in this time.
Yeah, as soon as you start talking about this, I was like, if he doesn't say Jimmy ain't walking through that door, I'm saying Jimmy ain't walking through that door. But I had a feeling that was coming because that has been how this team has relied upon its playoff appearances and playoff runs has been like we're asleep, we're asleep, we're asleep, and now we have a dude that can get to the bucket 13, the foul line 13 times in a game and is making ridiculous shots because he just plays off of this weird clutch chip on his shoulder adrenaline that he gets. So yeah, that ain't gonna be it in this one. We'll see what Tyler Hero can do as the man because he's still relying on above the break threes a lot, which is something that doesn't translate to being able to win playoff basketball unless you have a bunch of guys that can do that, and they're Steph, and one of them is Steph Curry. So that's not going to be a recipe for success either for Miami here moving forward. And I think you're getting a good number based on the Heat culture cachet that still exists because Eric Spoelstra was there, but the roster is much different than we've seen before. So interesting pick here that kind of coincides with what we're both talking about. It's plus 2,000, man. This is crazy. 20-1 for the Nets to make the play-in tournament. They're a game and a half back right now. Let me just get through this without you laughing too hard that you interrupt, and then we'll let you get back at me. But the Nets are the number one defensive rated team for the last 10 games before the All-Star break. Just let that sink in for a minute. They're just 1.5 games back right now of the 10 seed. And in that 10 spot, we're currently looking at a Chicago Bulls team. The Bulls are still there, right? Let me make sure I'm not lying to you. Excuse me. But I believe they're still there. I just had this up. And either way, the Bulls are going to be one of the teams that they're competing with. What you're worried about is is Philly going to come through and be able to pull this one out? And once again, I just told you I don't think they're going to win 35 games, so I'm not feeling like that's it. But yeah, the Bulls still at the 10 seed, so they need to jump Philly and the Bulls, but they're tied with Philly right now, and they have beaten them, like I said, in this last game before we just went to the break. They've got the number one defensive rating. The problem is the scoring is going to be tough because they are the 29th offensive rated team, which is good for 13th in net rating over those last 10 games. The key on defense is that they're 5th in limiting points in the paint, and they're scoring by getting turnovers. They're 12th in points off turnovers, as they're in the top 5 in forcing turnover percentage, and they're 2nd in limiting fast break points. So they're winning a lot of this transition stuff where they're getting to the rim via the transition. They're limiting points in the paint in the half court, and they're limiting fast break points and not letting people get easy looks at the rim that way before their defense can set up as well. In part because they're also not really shooting a ton of threes, and when they do, they're not really above the break, a lot more from the corners, which is harder to get out into transition, right? If the ball is being shot from corner to corner, it's going sideways off the rim. That doesn't lead to an easier fast break. So that's a big reason for why they play the way that they've played. Chicago in 10th, come on, man, right? We all know that they're going to fade away. They've been horribly, but what was that, 71-29 at the half the other day there in that one for Chicago. So I don't think they're coming back. Orlando is going to jump into the top 6, which will probably bump Detroit back out, and they'll be in the top 7 seed or so, or top 7 or 8 seed for Detroit. So they'll probably maintain that. All they got to do is make it over Chicago. And assume that Philly's not going to keep going, or Miami. So that's a lot of outs there with the 15th hardest strength of schedule. So it is much harder than Chicago. And it's 16th for Chicago. I don't care about them. They're done, man. And then Philly's 27th. So it's really like Philly, Miami, and can they at least just beat one of those teams at plus 2,000 with the number one rated defense over a 10-game span? I'll take that money. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, you did leave out the Toronto Raptors as somebody who could get in the mix here, and just to put some probabilities on it. I mean, the basketball reference simulations have the Nets at an 8.7% chance to get that 10 seed and be in the play-in. Raptors even higher at 10.3 because they do have the easiest remaining strength of schedule by kind of a wide margin in the NBA. The Raptors do. And they did their tanking last year. I can't see where this Nets team is actually in the play. And the NBA, the refs might be instructed to start throwing games the other way because the NBA's play-in product would be ruined if it's here's your first round matchup like the Hawks against the Nets that have been trying to lose all year. Oh my goodness.
Newsflash, the 9-10 game in the East has been the doo-doo bowl since the jump for sure. So it ain't gonna be any prettier this year. But yeah, if it's Philly with a hobbled Embiid versus Atlanta, I guess you can sell that better to your point. But yeah, you don't want the Nets in there. All I'm saying is that those guys are scrappy, and at least for Mosley, I'm trusting their coaching staff right now. But at any rate, that's all the time we have for you in futures. Definitely continue to follow along. Subscribe to that page so you don't miss any of the daily videos we're bringing you with both player props and best bet looks at sides and totals. So best of luck with these futures, and until we see you next, happy betting.